Hello, stoned apes and others who are curious about the healing powers of psychedelic medicines. Welcome to the Stoned Ape Reports. I'm your host, Stuart Preston. Each episode, I talk to another stoned ape, somebody who has experienced the transformational powers of psychedelics, or with a practitioner who works with these medicines. In this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Jimmy. Jimmy shared his story of decades of drug addiction, getting clean, and stopping the cravings in their tracks with psilocybin. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So please enjoy this episode with Jimmy. All right, Jimmy. Well, thank you so much for joining me here on the Stoned Ape Reports. It's an honor to talk to you. You know, I saw your story and some of the things you mentioned on Facebook, so I appreciate you coming onto the show to share those experiences.
I appreciate you asking me. It's an honor for sure.
Awesome. So let's just jump right in with why don't you tell us kind of your Stoned Ape story? You know, what were you dealing with in life, and where did it lead you, and how did entheogens and psychedelics help you out?
Awesome. Well, so quite elaborate, lengthy struggle with alcohol and drugs. Started at the age of 10. It progressed through a lifetime of attempts to quit, Department of Corrections. The way that I explain it to people is that nobody can make you do anything, and when you finally decide you want to do it, nobody can stop you. And so what I mean by that is that for 30 years I struggled to quit doing drugs, but I really didn't want to quit. I was partying, I was having a good time, and progressing into intravenous drug use of heroin and methamphetamine, cocaine. And it basically took me into later in the years, homeless. Life was basically on an end. I lived in a 4-door pickup truck with 2 rows of seats for 2.5 years. Didn't have any place to shower other than, couch surfing and doing that stuff. So when it comes down to it, I was high for a good part of 30 years that I wasn't incarcerated or dealing with prison or dealing with trials or dealing with drug courts or something along those lines to keep my freedom so I could get back into getting high again. Every time I got done with the treatment, or every time I got out of jail, or every time any of those things happened, I was right back at it. And it wasn't until 3 years ago, so I'm 46 years old, started when I was 10. I've been incarcerated and or in treatment for 7.5 years total throughout my life. And it was full tilt. It was abundance. Not abundance in a very law of attraction and happiness way, but abundance in, half an 8-ball and a half a gram of heroin, at the same time, and shooting it up and basically trying to kill myself in a fashion, but being so narcissistic, I couldn't. I would always put too much speed or too much cocaine in it to keep me alive. Right. So the idea behind it is that entheogens and the LSD or psychedelics came into play. I did them as a kid, but I did them in abundance. Again, 10 and 20 hits at a time, and 14 grams of mushrooms, and doing all of these things in excess and excess and excess. And I found myself living in a meth lab, and got on Facebook one night and was just trying to figure out some things, and a common friend came up, the people you may know, that whole thing that comes across the screen and says people you may know, and you look through it and you go, 7 mutual friends, how do I know this person? And you go through there and investigate, and it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and you think to yourself, God, I should hit them up and see if they want to get together. And so you wait until the next day and you hit them up, and they respond back and say, oh, hey, yeah, how do we know each other? And I say, oh, well, we just shared some friends. And they say, oh, well, that's cool. Yeah, how do you know them? And it goes into this big, long story. And turns out that they have a post on the back of their Facebook that says, trust the process. That's their cover page. That's what it says in their background.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, they've got to be in self-help, or they've got to be in rehab, or they got to be in recovery. Maybe they'll understand my story. And I was looking and looking and looking for somebody to be able to share that with, right? And comes down to being that No, she says, no, I've been clean for quite some time, and I've kind of gotten through that. Are you clean? Question mark.
Hmm.
And at that point, I had a choice. Do I want to lie or do I want to be honest? And so I lied, and I said, no, yeah, I've got about 6 months under my belt, so on and so forth. And she said, oh, I bet that's hard. I know exactly where you're at. Yeah, sure.
Hmm.
Let's get together and have something to eat. So we go ahead and we have dinner one night, and I walk in and she goes, you're not sober.
Hmm.
Right. And I said, no, but I really would like to learn how to get sober. And that's where the story begins, right? That's where
Hmm.
the efforts of psychedelics and ethnogens come into play. Well, it was you need to stop doing all of the things that you're doing, and you need to want to do it. So desire is a huge thing for me, where if you want to do it, there's nothing that can stop you from doing it except for
Hmm.
yourself, right? And so when it comes down to that, I look at it and I go, all right, I really do want to quit, but I really don't want to throw away all of my rigs, and I really don't want to throw away all of my pipes, and I really don't want to do all of these things. And so there was a good 2 to 3 week struggle there when our first beginning of our relationship started, that ended up basically go to sleep, catch up on your rest, get yourself clean, let's get some food, let's get some things going, and let's look into how we can do this. So the process starts out not so much jumping right into the therapeutics of psychedelics, but it starts out with mind, law of attraction, Abraham Hicks, Tony Robbins, books on tape, gaining the power of the mind to desire something better, to look on the other side of the fence, so to speak. And when it comes down to that, I think that that's one of the most important parts of my psychedelic journey and my ethnogen use, is the fact that you have to have positive intention or a goal set to bring your mindset into play, so that you can use that as your beneficial marker.
Yeah.
So I started out just reading a lot, Boy, there's so much stuff you can find out on the internet, and YouTubing videos about psychedelics and therapies, and going through some of the things that are now, the Johns Hopkins soundtracks, and some of the studies and some of the things that are going on. And I did everything that I could. And then through the law of attraction and through some of the other meditations and studies that I was doing, I put it out there. And I requested the universe to supply me with an avenue to gain some of these medicines and some of these medications, and to go that direction. And I started telling everybody. I started asking everybody, hey, do you know? Have you heard? Is there anything I can do? Is there any way I could? And somehow the universe provided. And so the phrase universe provided is a huge thing for me, where the universe provides for everything that you want, that you ask for, that you can give back to the universe. And lo and behold, ding dong kind of moment, there was an opportunity to purchase and to make available some medicines.
Hmm.
So that situation happened. I had experience, again, like I said, in abundance in the past, and when I was a child, of using LSD and using mushrooms and going that direction. But once those things were provided for me, I went camping, right? It was the summer 2016, 2017.
Hmm.
And we went camping, and we made some tea, and we experienced an experience that was unlike anything ever, in a
And this is a
small.
mushroom tea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a small fashion. I think we made it for the three people. I think it was less than 5 grams total, but it was ground up, and we put it in the
Right.
tea, and we each, took as much as we could stand, and and let it do its work. And um, I haven't had a craving, other than, some drug use dreams and some other things in the last 3 years. From that moment, it was gone. I stopped smoking. I stopped drugging. I stopped drinking. I stopped doing all of these things because the craving and the intention met head and head, right? So,
Hmm.
so and the intention took over. The intention and the universe knew I need to find my way out. I need to find a way to cure this and to move on to a different subject. And I think that that's basically where it all started. And so then I go on about an 8 or 10, maybe even 12-week regimen to where I'll do some maintenance. And I found that my life after three sessions, 2017, had really turned around. I'd landed a really great job, and was doing great things, and got a vehicle that I wasn't living in, right?
Mm-hmm.
and turned that into a rental situation, and got an apartment, and started to step up and step up and step up. And I just followed the dream. And I can't say that there was really any other plan other than continuing to have positive vibration, positive efforts towards everything I was doing.
So what can you tell us about the actual experiences? And like we discussed, it's not really looking for a trip report per se, but you drink the mushroom tea. A lot of people talk, especially with mushrooms, about being confronted by the teacher and learning some hard lessons. Did you have that kind of an experience coming out of this? How did you get to the point where there was no cravings? Was there any lesson that you had to work on and integrate? So what was the experience like?
So I think in the first 3 or 4 times it was in a smaller dosage fashion. I've always experienced the teacher, or I've always experienced the dissolving of ego and or the contemplation in a larger dosage or a larger fashion. And so
Mm-hmm.
yes, of course, those things did come about. I think the first one was a macro dose. I believe it was 3 tabs of gel acid, and then 7 grams of cubenzas. That was in another outdoor fashion. And the things that I generated from it was extreme severe onset anxiety upon the initial rise and or peak of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was talking myself back down out of it using some meditations and some positive affirmations. And
During the experience.
Yes,
Okay.
to get myself back off of that roller coaster ride,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it
Right.
was an extreme crescendo where you go from, you buckle into the roller coaster, and you chicka up that big first hill, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you get to the top of that first hill and you go, oh no, oh no, oh boy, here we go, oh my gosh. And you start to think, can I do this? Am I going to lose that? Am I going to lose my mind? I was in a situation where I was the only person in the group who was actually doing this. And so there was a bit of that maintaining or mind control situation where I don't want them to all freak out and be like, dude, what are you doing? There
Yeah.
was a bit of guilt and anxiety and remorse that was going on through that. But for the most part, no, I've never really had to deal with any of those things. And maybe here's a little reason why, and that's going to kind of go back into the drug abuse and drug use. I was pretty horribly drained. I was pretty small already. I was working my way from not being able to eat for several days, and I was working my way from living in my car for 2 years. And so the minimalization that was going on in my life at that time, I was trying to build back up into something which, in a strange way, have found that I don't need the abundance. I'm not looking for the universe to give me the abundance and do those things. I'm looking for the universe to understand that I have 4 pictures on the wall and they all mean something to me. I don't have just random artwork on the house. I don't believe in that. I've gone without for so long, Stuart, that I believe that I don't need abundance of anything or stuff, right?
Right.
So maybe in a weird way, that's a big part of the teacher, is that the lessons that I've learned and the thoughts that I've had during these trips have been reassurance, have been, you're doing the right thing. Look at where you are. Look at where you've been. Look at how things are going. And like I said before in a different episode, and that's this. I don't believe that ego is a bad thing. I don't believe that ego is needs to be dissolved and you need to walk around as an egoless being. I believe that it just needs to be kept in check and it needs to be appreciated and honored. I just don't believe that it needs to be completely dissolved and thrown away.
Right.
And
That makes
maybe
sense.
maybe it's me, right? Maybe I don't understand exactly what ego really is in order for it to be such a horrible thing.
Yeah, I don't know if people think it's a horrible thing, but I know that there's definitely a lot of philosophy about it. But I wonder, one thing I was wondering about you, I hear a lot of people that go through addictions and whatever it is in life. There's usually something behind it, like maybe trauma or something else behind it that a lot of times the entheogens bring up. Was there anything like that for you? Do you discover that was kind of the root of whatever emotional thing was going on that was behind all those years of drugs and alcohol and whatnot during that? And did the psychedelics kind of help you discover that?
So it's a great question. I appreciate you going to that direction. So I believe that most of my drug abuse started as curiosity at such a young age. At that point in my life, at the age of 10, there wasn't a whole lot that had happened yet. There was a couple things that were going on because of the nature of my family. I'm the youngest. There's 5 years between me and my closest sibling, and then there's 10 years between my next closest sibling. So I'm quite a bit younger than most of my family. There's 5 of us total. 4 of them are all older. And so there was a lot of loneliness. My addiction and my drug dealing and my possession and my distribution and my charges and my other things that I did all my life were because I wanted to be needed. I wanted my phone to ring, so to speak. I wanted people to knock on my door and ask if I had anything. So there was a lot of that drove my addiction and drove my discrepancies with my choices. But then there was also another side of probably 14 years of severe sexual trauma, being used as a sexual pawn in a relationship. Super interesting stuff that I found to be okay in my life because it was at the time of felt needed, felt wanted, felt important about
Mm-hmm.
that. Those things have kind of come out, and more than being brought forward and made a realization of it. It was more or less, nobody can erase that stuff from your brain, Stuart, right? Nobody can erase that from your mind. And so I think it was more of an acceptance and more of a, not so much merit badge, but I'm proud of the fact that I've survived the things I have. I'm proud of the fact that those things have happened to me and I've made it through it. I don't view myself as somebody who's prideful or boisterous anymore. I think that it's toned that down quite a bit. I used to be very, very eccentric and very egocentric. And I think that those things have mellowed out, and I've gotten to a point where I'm less, well, I'm deaf for the most part. I've had an accident, a traumatic brain injury, and so I speak very loudly. But during the time of being on speed and doing the other things in heroin, I was severely, hey, look at me. Hey, what can I do? And I've really mellowed out. Don't know if that's dog years, I'm old, right? So I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if that's that or what it is, but I'm finding to be great relationships being built around my honesty and about my transparency, and building some of these things for these people to understand that, hey, I'm just like you are. I'm doing some good things. I've been in the gutter and now I'm back out on the curb, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm dry and the rain is going down the gutter, but I'm up on the curb now. I'm not down in the gutter anymore. And here's how I did it. And how can I help you get to where you need to be? And those things and those mission statements that I've done since I've gained, remember, I'm really only 3 years off of the needle. And it's tremendous, the greatness of it. And I know for a fact that it's the power of the mind, the power of positivity, but it's also the entheogens. I mean, it's got to be given the due respect that it deserves, of being able to put those new neural pathways together and be able to create new habits and to create new mindset and extinguish some of those old connections. Because like I've said before to a couple other people, the repetitive nature of drug abuse, the getting up, the getting high, the going to work, the getting high, the getting up, the going to work, the getting high, the getting high, the getting high, that's how all of those things are formed. But being able to break those neural patterns and those neural pathways to get yourself off of those thoughts and those cravings, and then doing a routine maintenance. I don't do anything in between my maintenances. Nothing. I'm law abiding. I'm completely good. I speed. I'm sorry. I have a lead foot. But ultimately, everything is great. And people who look at me in the streets don't have any clue, but I'm the first one to tell them that, hey, I'm in recovery. How's things going for you guys? And they're like, I don't want to quit. So that's the whole ticket, is developing the desire, finding a way to get there, and then maintaining and doing the therapies that need to be done. And integration, super cool and super awesome. Not as a trip report, but every time you go onto a therapy or into a session, something will happen that you integrate from. So there's always a hidden message, and there's always something that will happen that you can bring forward. And recognizing that is the super cool part. I've really found that to be enjoyable.
Do you have any, do you want to share any examples of something that was a really super cool message that you were able to integrate?
So, the one of the last ones was, we were in the desert in Arizona, and we had the lady, we were probably 3 miles out of camp, going up the ridge, this beautiful plateau, looking at all the cactus, the yuccas were in bloom. It was April, and we were about 3 miles out of camp, heading up the trail, and here comes this little 90-year-old lady. She comes streaming down the pathway. She's already been up to the top and back down, and it's, I don't know, 11:30, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's dead of the sun, and she comes down by, and in the middle of the therapy session, she comes, out of the sunlight, so to speak, and she just comes down the trail, and she says, "You have all of your water. It's beautiful on the other side. You guys make sure you have enough to eat. Make sure you have enough water." And she's just kind of cruising through. Well, not to say anything, but going from being a speed addict and an opiate addict, I've battled a little bit with my weight and my fitness and my other things, from going from very sucked up in an addict form and being 160 pounds to being now my normal traveling and cruising weight of 220.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a little soft. So most of the cool things that happened there were fitness, taking care of your body, hydration, and just, I've got to get myself into a fitness mode and get myself into a bikini weight, right? So that was one of the most recent ones that turned out to be super cool. Coming home, starting out with 7-minute workouts, working into 30-minute workouts, and going that way, and really kind of getting on the path, so to speak, of not so much shedding the weight, because it's not the weight that I'm worried about. It's the softness or the cardio and the other things. And just seeing this little old lady coming out of the sunlight in the desert just was one of those messages from the universe that says, hey, look, she's still doing it.
Mm-hmm. Universe provided you a message.
Absolutely. And like to say, I'm still doing my fitness, and I'm still doing my regimen in the morning, and it's making me feel, a million times better. And I'm pretty satisfied with my life. And so I'm not necessarily a gym rat going heavy on the weights, but it was definitely one of those things that was a spur of the moment message that slapped me right in the head and said, look at you. You could get ran circles around by the 90-year-old lady.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a cool moment.
Nice. Now, you mentioned a traumatic brain injury. How how did that play into your decision to work with the psychedelics, or the way you worked with them? Did that play a role in there at all?
Well, I guess that there's always a little bit of apprehension that there may be some sort of leftover trauma. So 7 skull fractures, 10-day coma, and plenty of subdermal hematomas, bleeding on the brain,
And
some
that all happened
butterfly
before you
formations of the
started these
bleeding.
journeys?
Yes, 1996.
Oh, okay.
So it actually it actually ended a lot of my stuff. But I stuttered for a long time. I still have ears ringing and tinnitus that developed from that accident. And the interesting thing is that anytime I'm on a therapy or anytime I'm doing a psychedelic, whether it be mushrooms or LSD, my tinnitus goes away. And I'm not sure how to explain it, but it does. I
What
don't
is
know if it's my
tinnitus?
brain is doing other. Tinnitus is ears ringing, so
Okay.
basically I can hear my pulse.
Okay.
I can hear my pulse and sort of a small dull frequency, just kind of a
Hmm.
all the time, every day,
And
forever.
when you're on a journey,
And
that goes away.
yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's super rewarding in the fact that it could be that the stimulus of the brain is doing other things, and so it's drowned out by something.
Mm-hmm.
You know how the intensity of your hearing picks up quite a bit when you're in a journey. So maybe it's muffled down, but I've never been able to hear the ringing while I'm actually in the session. So that's a super cool side effect. But the TBI never really caused me to think. Uh, I've been pumping pounds and pounds of methamphetamine and heroin into my body for the last 20 years, right? So I wasn't too worried about whether my brain could handle it or not, if maybe that was your
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Because you'd already put your brain through a lot, so you weren't too concerned about that going into it.
No, not at all. That's for sure. So the cool thing about the things that I've learned, and the cool thing about the way that it's all kind of transpired is the universe does talk to me. I'm able to do some mind control, which helps in some very, let's just say, stressful, sober situations. And I don't know if sober is the right word, but everyday situations
Mm-hmm.
where work is a heavy, stressful, customer service and or client needs. End of the day, late night call comes in when I'm on call on a Friday, have to pick up and get going and get out to a place and do that stuff. And the mind control that I have in some of these macro dose settings where you'll get those roller coaster moments where you start to get a little bit of anxious and get a little bit of anxiety coming on to where you've maybe pushed the threshold a little bit too much, and doing the meditations and the calming and deciding that that's not necessarily the case and calming yourself down really helps in taking, because for 30 years of being a drug addict, Stuart, you have very little patience, right?
Hmm.
You don't develop those things as an addict for the most part. You throw tantrums, you do things, and you let stress get into you really quick as a reason or an excuse to get high. So through these therapies and gaining some of these moments to where you kind of want to step out of yourself, and calming yourself down and meditating yourself back down through the entheogens, boy, I'll tell you what, they help the everyday life quite a bit in
Hmm.
tolerance and in patience. So those are some really cool things that I've developed along the way in the last 3 years as well.
Nice. So, given all your experiences, what would you say is needed to have a good therapeutic or spiritual journey? What are the components that you would say you really need to kind of put together to have a really good healthy experience that you can take some lessons away from?
Well, I think that number one, so there's really the four points, right? So you have intention, um, maybe journaling some intentions for a week or two prior, things that are bothering you, things that you want to dispose of. So your intention, I think, is the number one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Your mindset is usually needs to be an everyday thing. I think that if you're filling yourself full of the world that we're living in today, you're going to have a bad experience. But I think that if you're able to power over that and get into something a little bit more positive, and or understand that a negative, can result in a positive, and should be turned into a positive in most aspects. That is an everyday practice. So mindset, just being in the power of positivity, is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're set, where you're at in a setting. I think that you need to be, for me, I need to be outdoors.
Hmm.
Whether it be out in the yard, whether it be out in the mountains, the desert, but outside. And I prefer shade. I don't prefer scorching hot sun, and I like to have just a very faint soundtrack in the back. So I'll usually SoundCloud,
Hmm.
or I'll do something along those lines, to where I can be just intrigued by the music and have it as a dull roar in the back. And then I'll usually start out by listening to a couple Abraham Hicks lessons about intentions and the power of positivity, law of attraction, and kind of get going that direction. And then usually we'll try and do some sort of physical exertion during the session or the journey, and then a really cool letdown, or a really cool ending to the
Yeah.
journey. The other thing is too, is that I like to fast. I don't eat for a good 24 hours
Mm-hmm.
prior to my journey, and I also try and dehydrate myself initially, and then hydrate. And I will do some fruit after the peak. So apples and oranges after the peak, on the way back down.
So you dehydrate
Um,
beforehand, and then do you
mhm.
hydrate during, or no? You just do the fruits on the come down.
So I'll hydrate during, water only, no sugars, or any of that stuff, and then which I don't drink any soda or do any of that stuff. I'm only a water person,
Mm-hmm.
but I will then go ahead and hydrate during. So I'll do as little as I can to dehydrate, and it's almost a practice as the Native American sweat ritual, where they would starve, or they would fast, and they would dehydrate before they do some of their sweat therapies and or peyote sessions. And I've read a few of those things, to where it brings out some of the demons and lets the medicine do some of the work that way. But then obviously hydrating during, and then again, like I said, the vitamin C's, or
Okay.
even emergency in a bottle of water on the way back down.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Um, I know you're very open. You talk about this, and I'm grateful because you're going to help a lot of people with this. Have you dealt with any stigma? As you talk to people, have you felt stigma inside of you, or have you felt people react to you with any kind of stigma toward psychedelics in general? I mean, I guess after 30 years of with the drug use, you probably had to deal with a lot of stigma and reaction, and probably judgment, from other people. What has it been like when you talk about psychedelics and entheogens? Anything like that?
Well, that's a great question. I wish that there was about another hour and a half we could talk about stigma in just general society. I,
Yeah.
I agree with your statement of being an addict for 30 years. You know, there's definitely a physical appearance of a heroin or meth addict. there's a physical appearance that
Mm-hmm.
you standing at the gas pump, pumping your gas, and old boy pulls into the gas pump next to you, and he gets out all jittery jattery and or talking to himself and or other, maybe some teeth missing, maybe some of those things, of those physical characteristics that happen. Luckily, I played hockey growing up, so I've got a bunch of fake teeth that never could rot out of my mouth. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of them that I used to get pulled just so I could get pill subscriptions from my dentist.
Hmm.
And so I have a few teeth missing, but I've got most of my front plates together. So the point I'm trying to make is that I don't have the appearance, and I don't believe that there's an athenogen or psychedelic stigma, right? I don't think that anybody can look at it unless you're wearing a tie-dyed shirt, right? So ultimately, there's not too much of that. When I get into the fact that I'm in recovery and that I use psychedelics to help with my recovery and aid in my therapy sessions, I would think that more than not, probably 70% of the people are like, huh, so you take acid? So they're kind of uneducated in that form, but they're curious, like, huh? Those people who know me from when I was a full-blown addict and growing up through school years and high schools and other things, they're pleased as punch. You know
Yeah.
how human race is. I'm so happy that I'm so happy that you're still alive, and I'm so happy that you made it through it, and thank God you did, and kudos to you, and do whatever you're doing that makes you happy, because I just like to see you alive. I don't want to come to your funeral, and those kind of things are what I get on the other side, right? So people who knew me growing up, they're so pleased that I'm still here, because there goes plenty of times where I could very well not be, right? So there's that. But my family, the stigma with my family is pretty much just kind of they're pretty worn out, right? There's some religious overtone there, and
Hmm.
there's also a bit of don't infect my kids, right?
Yeah.
Worry about whether I'm going to offer some ideas to the kids to maybe have them step a different direction than they're being told at home.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it comes into the fact that most of the people at work are super excited. They enjoy the whole aspect of knowing there's somebody they can go to that's experienced in a lot of those things. We deal with a lot of different clients, and we deal with a lot of different coworkers that are of the age where, maybe they're doing some things on the weekends they shouldn't be, right? And
Mm-hmm.
battling some demons that they shouldn't be. And I'm super honest. My drug of choice these days is honesty and transparency. And so we'll have a Monday morning meeting where we sit down and people will be like, so what did you guys do? And I'll say, well, we flew down to Phoenix and went out into the desert, Superstition Mountain, and had a psychedelic therapy session. And it was super awesome. The lightning and the rainstorm that came in, and so on and so forth. And everybody just is really latched on. So as far as the negative aspect of any of those things, Stuart, I don't believe that there has been one of those.
Good.
Every single one of the people that I deal with every day knows that I'm in recovery, knows that I'm trustworthy, knows that everything is going in a positive form. Some of them have asked me about it. Some of them have kind of in a way just said, well, that's good for you. And that's fine. I don't need judgment. I don't care for judgment, and I'm okay with judgment. The quality of person that I'm rebuilding in the last 3 years is getting pretty good at being okay with myself.
Wonderful. That's awesome. That's awesome and very inspirational. Your story is very inspirational. As we wrap up here, um, what else do you want to share? What else do you want to get out there? How's life treating you today? Is there anything else you want to get out before we roll this thing up?
Sure. So a couple things that just in the whole overall message is, everybody's got to find what works for them. Stuart. I'm not a shape, one form, and that's it. But I do know that psychedelic therapy has worked for me in a tremendous fashion. I do know that with the cannabis movement and the money grab situation that's kind of gone on, that's distorted the legalization. I hope that doesn't happen with this process as well. Yeah, so a couple of the things that I'd like to tell people is basically just find what works for you. I'm not about necessarily work for everyone, but it's sure to get bigger. To change the way that your life is going, the psychedelics can easily help you reroute some of those thoughts. You need to have the positive thoughts, and you need to have the right direction and go the right direction, no matter what it is. And I think ultimately desire, patience, good intentions, and something to feel good about, being honest and open. It's amazing to me how many people you can go and just say something to about, I'm having a really bad day. And they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And just the fact that you've said that makes things a little bit better, right?
Sure
So
does.
integrate your life however you need to do it, but do realize that there's a lot of great people in these groups, and a lot of great people in the world in psychedelics, and the treatment facilities are going to be coming up and more and more and more. And if you need to find yourself in a life-changing manner, changing it from whatever it may be, as you know, it doesn't have to be addiction. It doesn't have to be depression. It could be anything that you want to change in a positive fashion. I mean, they're writing code with microdosing, right? So
Right.
it could be applied to anything. And I just am very, very grateful for you giving me a voice for a few minutes and allowing me to be a part of this wonderful movement, and finding some intrigue in my story, and wanting me to talk to your guests and your followers. And I'm super grateful. And I think that's the way that I live every day, Stuart, is I'm super grateful to still be here. There was always a wonder, why am I still here? And why am I still doing this? And trudge through my day. And now it's just like, man, I can't wait to go to sleep and dream again. And man, I can't wait for the next 12-week therapy. And gall, I sure do wish you guys can get your shit together, because, because I'm having a great day. Come along with me. And that's the life that I've really been looking for, living for 30 years. And I'm finally getting here. And it wouldn't have happened without some of the psychedelic therapy help. That's for sure.
Well, that is wonderful, Jimmy. Thank you so much for sharing that. Truly inspirational, and I'm super proud of you and all the work you've done, and just wish you the best of continued success in your life.
I appreciate it. Thank you. You too, sir.
That concludes this edition of the Stoned Ape Reports. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Instagram at Stoned Ape Comedy, and subscribe to our newsletter at www.stonedapecomedy.com. Again, thanks for listening, and catch you next time, Stoned Apes.